I'd like to thank the developer Adam Thompson for supplying a review key for this video. Have you ever wanted to travel planet to planet, crushing the weak? Did you ever want to blow shit up? Then you come to the right place, my friends. Are you ready, Space Vikings? Now that's gaming.
Space Vikings, a fringe group of warriors roaming the edges of galactic civilization. Anyone can become a Space Viking if they prove capable and embrace a violent, barbaric way of life.
Yeah, that is pretty much Space Viking Raiders. The whole plot of the story is to retrieve Elementium, one of the rarest known elements in the universe. You have the option to play as one of the 4 Space Vikings: Drederick, Athelia, Tommy K, and Zika. These characters all have varying personalities, like Tommy K, the stereotypical jock whose brain got messed up from playing nutball. Yeah, don't ask. Drederick, the leader who half of the time you can't tell if he is dense or doesn't give a shit about the crew's safety. Athelia, who is sometimes the voice of reason but sort of a smartass at times. And Zika, my favorite character, who acts kind of brash but at the same time wants to play a bigger role than just blowing stuff up. You can't forget the antagonist, if you can call him that, from these planets who try to be civil towards our heroes, but it doesn't exactly work out well for them.
Right, folks, let's do what we do. Zika, wanna start things off for us?
About time!
Oh dear, I'm sorry. We'll have to destroy you now.
The game emphasizes itself as an action comedy PvE MOBA, pretty different. I always wanted to see this style in a PvE environment. The left mouse button is your standard attack and your right mouse button controls movement. Q, W, E, and R on the keyboard are what you use for special abilities. Holding spacebar gives you a zoom out of the battlefield so you can see what is up ahead, which is pretty neat and really handy in some instances. When pressing the T key lets out a battle shout that you can use to assert dominance on your foes. However, there is a problem I ran into. If you do want to use the mouse and keyboard, you aren't able to rebind your keys, so you're pretty much stuck with this layout. There is an option to use the controller and it works just as good as mouse and keyboard. The controller buttons can be rebound in these settings, but why aren't you able to rebind your mouse or keyboard? Like, that can turn many people off from wanting to play any further. Luckily, it was comfortable for me, but everyone is different and hopefully it gets added to the game soon. Each Space Viking that you play as have different abilities that make them unique from each other. For instance, Tommy has a cleave attack and explosive mines. Athelia provides crowd control with her crystal slowing down enemies. Zika has a long range attack that is very deadly. Drederick is a good balance that has a powerful knockback, and his chain lightning attack is really satisfying to use. I wish it did a little bit more damage though. Your main goal is to get from the beginning to the end by going through waves of enemies that spawn from their respective bases. You also have to worry about shield generators to break since they protect the main base. Bigger enemies like these here will try to prevent you by either dealing damage or knocking you back. There are 3 main difficulties, so as you would have guessed, Legendary has harder enemies with more health and harder bases to destroy. On Easy, it's a bit mindless and more chill. It kind of provides some challenge, but you can mostly rush their base sometimes. Normal gives you a decent challenge, although with Tommy, I was still able to rush your base and ignore the shields and enemy waves half of the time. Although the characters felt pretty fun to play and it gave me more of a reason to want to switch every level, on the legendary difficulty I found that Tommy was very potent with his cleave attack to the point where I noticed I used him the most. He doesn't use as nearly as much energy for this attack, making it a little too powerful. Zika is also strong with a spellcaster version of this, but a little more energy is used up. Athelia and Drederick felt a little too weak on Legendary, honestly, but the lower difficulties for solo play seem more balanced between the 4 characters. Space Viking Raiders, while fun, felt pretty repetitive after you discover that the world themes repeat. Levels themselves change in layout and enemies still stay the same. The game does make fun of itself for knowing this due to budget and limitations, which is funny, but having another world or two would have been awesome. A lot of these feel empty. This big battlefield that you go through often has unused space. Yeah, you can speed through these by using objects in the world, but I wish there was more to it, either having the levels be smaller with more things or a bigger world with some side objectives that could be fun to go after. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just give me more of a reason to replay the level again besides character variety. And example is killing X amount of enemies in a certain time limit, maybe unlocking a special skin or weapon, even if it's just a palette swap. But yeah, I kind of guess that goes back to time constraints. Maybe it would have been better if the game was delayed for a longer period of time just to add a little more to it. This is a good time to talk about some of the other issues. The game doesn't end off with the way you see it in the intro, it just ends with the credits, no cutscene afterwards or anything, which is quite disappointing because it was looking like one of the characters was really starting to be fleshed out by the end. The in-game models themselves look different from their artwork, which is a shame. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but these are a little bit strange in how off they are from what you see in the intro or even what you see in game. You also aren't able to use voice chat or text chat in multiplayer, which I can see being a big problem for people. At the very least, having text chat can be helpful because playing on Legendary with a group can be challenging. I played with a couple of others and the developer, which was a total blast. It was harder, but having that synergy between your attacks and experimenting with taking out enemies wanted me to play more. I feel like this game is designed to play that way, and having at least one other player helps bring more strategy on how you face your enemies. Online itself has been a positive experience with the connection. There was only one lag spike in the 2-hour sessions that I did. Besides that, I didn't have any weird issues with the enemy desyncing or connection loss. So how does the sound stack up to the gameplay? Is it good or is it bad? Here are some sound clips that you can listen to that I recorded.
Ours is the glory.
It's all at my fingertips. The captured scientists have our next target, a crystal Saccharos planet. They say it's loaded with elementium. Every raid brings me one step closer to ultimate glory.
So what did you think, everyone? I think that the sound stacks up to what you would expect, and even probably more than that. Each hit had that sweet reverb, and it didn't feel like your attacks, they were paper that you see in a lot of other games. The combat itself, with all of the abilities and the sounds they made, are really well done. This is something that other indie games or even games in general tend to lack. I kind of wish the music was a bit more lively. In itself, the tracks are pretty nice to listen to as it changes up from what you might normally expect here. You are these raiders fighting a war against other civilizations, so I always picture more lively and more heroic music going to really get into the game, although I guess this can kind of go with the whole comedy theme for the entire game, so I'm not entirely sure that's more of a personal thing. I also get reminded of 60s futuristic music for some reason. It has that tone in some of the songs. Oh, and some of the attacks were kind of quiet, like these sluglings or sugar fiends, since you aren't able to adjust these sound effects, which is a pretty big deal in my opinion. You aren't able to really like level these out, so sometimes I feel like the music overpowers the sound effects in general. The voice actors did a great job with bringing these characters to life in humorous dialogue. They all have quirky attitudes and it really made me want to hear each conversation instead of skipping them. Definitely one of the bigger highlights of the game, and having these characters expanded on would be really fun to see in the future. What did you think about the hit sounds and music, everyone? I'm very curious to know. When it comes to the overall package and price of the game, I really like to think carefully to tell you if it's worth the price. The game is $20 US, and I feel like that's a little too much. $15 would be a much fairer price in my opinion due to the repetitive levels and lack of features. This game took me around 4 hours to complete for the first time, and I did play it with the developer halfway through, so I would say you can get a good amount of time, 6 hours or so. I still think if you are able to find this game at a cheaper price and you want to spend an afternoon by yourself, or which I personally recommend playing with at least one other person, then yeah, go for it. It has its pros as well as flaws that need to be worked on, so make sure that you notice that the things I say in this video, if they're really important to you, that will, affect your final outcome. I do think that the series is headed in the right direction. Congratulations on the game release itself, Adam, as that is a huge accomplishment. If you can improve on the things mentioned in this video, then I can see others having a good amount of fun with the game. It's time for the question of the day. Who is your favorite Space Viking of all time? Mine would be the sandwich eater Skoldir from Awesome Knots. Something about an armored fat guy losing weight as he punches people is satisfying and motivating. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, everyone. If you want to discover something new like Space Viking Raiders, then feel free to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification to stay up to date with my latest videos. Here is a victorious playlist of my past reviews on the channel that can get you started. As always, everyone, thank you so much for watching this video and take care.